being, well, it's the word being in both German and English. Well, it's slightly different because in English you can think of it as a noun but also as a gerund.
Yeah.
So it has that verbal aspect to it. Sein is a noun, but I suppose an infinitive.
Yeah.
So the gerund would be seiend. So there's a slight difference. Yes, being at the beginning of the logic is not a thing. It's not a what, it's not an it.
Yeah.
It's sheer indeterminate immediacy.
Yeah.
It's the being that we normally think of. So when you look around and you think that I'm encountering the table, the chair, and they are there.
Yeah.
It's that is there, is. But then stripped away of all the associations and implications that we normally attach to it. So when we're thinking, well, that chair is there, we mean in space and time. All right, take space and time away. We think there is a thing that's there, take the thing away. And that you're left with just the immediacy, the being, not even being there, because that's got a spatial echo to it. And it's utterly indeterminate. So it's what we ordinarily understand by being, but as utterly indeterminate. And this is quite important, although it may sound a little bit convoluted. It's not to be understood as not determinate, because to understand being as not determinate or as in-determinate is just to determine it as indeterminate. Hegel wants the indeterminacy of being to be so radical that you can't even oppose it to determinacy. It's just being that is not further determined. In fact, the beginning of the logic is being, pure being, without further determination.
Yeah.
And the idea there is at the start of the logic, you think being, and you don't then say, oh, well, being is here, not nothing or not something. It's not, you don't mark it off against something else. You just think being in its indeterminacy and then stop and then leave it at that. So that's what being is. Nothing is what that being vanishes into.
Yeah.
It is the having vanished of that being, the having been lost of that being. It is also utterly indeterminate, but without being. But then Hegel says, but actually that pure nothing has its own immediacy. It's pure nothing. It can nuff as much as it wants to, but that's all it does. It's pure nothing. And in the purity, it is just immediately itself. It has its own immediacy. So it's being again. So it is also lost. And so what you get at the beginning of the logic, interestingly enough, is the vanishing of the two terms. You have being, which vanishes into nothing, which vanishes into being, and so on. And the implication of that is that the purity with which we start, the purity of being or the purity of nothing, is a purity that impurifies itself, that loses itself through its very purity, and ultimately leads to new categories. The first of which is becoming, which is just the name Hegel gives actually to the process in which being vanishes into nothing and nothing vanishes into being. Hegel just names that process becoming. So becoming isn't in a way a third category. Becoming is just the vanishing that both pure being and pure nothing prove to be. And then there are a whole set of other categories. So yes, so now in the course of the further development, being does prove to be determinate. Hegel says actually the indeterminate immediacy of being actually eventually determines itself and takes the form of determinate being. It also takes the form of a relationship between something and something else. So to be initially is very indeterminate and immediate, turns out to involve being determinate, being something, being finite, being one among many, being quantitative, and so on. And there will come a point at which I suppose you can begin to say that being then has a character. It sort of turns into a what. And so by the end of the logic, if you ask what is being, well, being is self-determining reason. Yeah, you can answer that question. But at the beginning, it's not a what.